Hi, my name is Alyssa Warren, and my client for the behavior change project was a 6-year-old boy named Len diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder. He was referred to the clinic for deficits in functional communication, social deficits, and problematic behavior. Recently, his behaviors have decreased dramatically, and he is commanding in multiple word sentences. He is transitioning to school in the fall of 2016. To prepare him for this transition, I targeted group disruptive behavior as the behavior for reduction. This is because he is transitioning to school and he will need to learn how to sit in a group environment without disrupting the group, talking in a loud voice, and attending the instructor while staying quiet. Group disruptive behavior was defined as any behavior that caused or could cause the participants in the group or the group leader to turn their attention away from the group and the instruction and turn their attention towards my client or the disruption. High intensity and low intensity disruption was tracked for the treatment and return to baseline condition. High intensity disruption was defined as any behavior that could cause the whole group or multiple members of the group to turn their attention away and towards my client. This could include screaming, clapping hands, kicking the table, speaking out of turn, but it would not include humming to oneself or speaking under one's breath. This would be characterized as low intensity behavior that caused or could cause only his immediate neighbors to turn their attention towards him. I use a partial interval recording system to record this behavior. I tried to use duration recording, but this proved too difficult. Some of his behaviors were really brief and really quick, and it was hard to distinguish when the behavior started and when the behavior ended. So I broke up the 30-minute group session and set 30-second intervals. A plus would be put in the box if the behavior did occur, a minus if the behavior did not occur, and an H or L if the behavior did occur for high or low intensity. The group was a 30-minute group, and it mimicked the typical transitioning morning routine for typical school children. So they did attendance, they learned about the calendar, learned about the weather, and sang songs. I use a reversal design, an AB-AB design is what I programmed for. Due to the variability in the data and the results, only an ABA design was used. For baseline, there were 2 therapists that took the data depending on who was assigned to the client for that day. For baseline, they would tell Len it's time to go to the resource room, but wouldn't prepare him for what was to come. They would transition to the resource room and sit down for group. They would begin the stopwatch to record the 30-second intervals as soon as the group leader gave the first direction. So they would begin recording the data at that time. During the treatment, an individualized social story was created for my client. It outlined what was expected of him in group, the behaviors that he should show, and what happened when he engaged in those behaviors. It also showed pictures that depicted how you sit with nice hands, how you sit with a quiet mouth, etc. Before transitioning into the resource room, the therapist would tell Len it's time for group in the resource room, transition outside the door, read the social story, and then transition in, and the sequence would be just like baseline. They would sit down, start the stopwatch as soon as the first direction was given. The behavior in both conditions is ignored. If he engages in the group disruptive behavior, it's ignored, and it's just recorded on the data sheet. Differential reinforcement for all the clients is provided for appropriate sitting and attending to the instructor and staying on task. IUA was recorded for all of the sessions, all of the different phases. For baseline, 40% of the sessions, 2 per therapist, were recorded. 96% agreement was the mean, with a range of 94 to 98%. For the treatment, 33% of the conditions IUA was recorded. The mean was 95%, and the range was 94 to 96% for that. And in the return to baseline, 40% of the sessions IUA was conducted or collected. 95 to 96 was the range, and there was a mean of 95.5%. The results showed that there was no effect of the social story on the behavior. Here is the graph. In the graph you can see there is extreme variability in the data during all phases. You can see there was only 3 data points for the intervention collected for stable. This was due to the time constraints on the behavior change project. It took a while to get stable baseline and stable intervention data. Also, for disruptive behavior by magnitude, you could see here is a high intensity behavior. It decreased during baseline, and the return to baseline, and low intensity behavior increased during baseline. And this was without the social story intervention even implemented. So generalization was programmed into this. The social story was read between 2 different therapists, and the group leader changed daily. So he was used to different people reading the story and different people running the group as well. It was programmed for generalization across settings. If the intervention had an effect, it would have been done across 2 other group settings, one in the same room and one in the gross motor room. So a little bit about why the intervention didn't work. There were a lot of variables that we saw a high correlation in the group disruptive behavior, including who ran the group, the amount of people present in the resource room, if behaviors were occurring from other peers, high intensity behaviors, his behaviors went up. Also, his home environment was disrupted right as we implemented the intervention, the baseline and the intervention. His father had left, who he had lived with his whole life, and his mother and himself are in the middle of a move. So there are a lot of variables that may have influenced this behavior and influenced the intervention working properly. Thank you.